Welcome, my friends, to a mini-series of Tea Time that I'm calling Defense Against the Dark Narcs. While in the process of making videos about my transgender experience and putting them up in a public forum, I'm bound to be subject to a full range of human responses, and this series, for which this video is a part, is dedicated to the comments I receive that make fantastic teaching tools on the toxic barriers and often narcissistic behavior that keep us from making and intrapersonal progress in life. Whether you're someone who has committed these toxic behaviors or someone who has suffered from them, my goal is to shine an analytical light on these everyday examples in the hopes that they become more visible and therefore easier to overcome in healthy ways. This video is coming from a comment that was posted on my video that I did on Elliot Page, analyzing whether or not I thought Elliot Page was transgender. And I did a body language breakdown analysis to lend support for the point that I was trying to make in that video. Link above if you'd like to see it. So giving you that little bit of background, you can understand, have a little bit of context for where this person's comment is coming from. So they are critiquing my critique of Elliot's body language. In these videos, I try to read as much of the comments verbatim as I can so that you can get a real feel for the way the conversation was flowing, and then I try to break it down afterwards. So the comment from this individual, and it was only one, was, "Your first argument is just, quote unquote, I don't understand what a nervous laugh is, and your arguments only get worse and worse. Don't you realize that it's pretty normal that talking about your transition can make you feel uncomfortable since it enlightens the fact that you're not a biological male? Like, hello, it's just dysphoria? But I'm not even going to start on it, given that you clearly don't have dysphoria. Long hair, don't care about looking like a woman, don't care about being called she. I feel like I'm hallucinating when I think about what I just watched. How can you have so little self-awareness? How can you think that you're one of the good trans when you look like a whole woman? How could you think that you're the rational trans when you just have absolutely no grasp on what bad gender dysphoria feels like? It's really embarrassing. You're making a fool of yourself. I can't believe my eyes." So my response to this: I can see that you're pretty upset by this video, and I'd like to help if answering your questions could accomplish that. No snark, just response, even though I'm sure you will not take kindly to me opposing your remarks. I say all of this in the hopes that even if it absolutely enrages you, at some point you may consider that what you've said is as myopic as you've painted me. I have inappropriate nervous laughter myself, and see that this is something Elliot experiences. It's unrelated to the bulk of my analysis, which is focused more specifically around the question about joy in transitioning. I would kindly remind you that if I didn't have dysphoria, I would not have had my breasts removed, nor would I have bothered with testosterone. I think you believe that just because I project confidence, I'm somehow not fit for the trans community because I'm supposed to be perpetually tortured by the fact that I was born the opposite sex. There is a spectrum of transgender experience, and it can range from my end, which may be considered mild, all the way to someone who would rather not exist than be stuck in the body they are in. And when you get therapy, it's supposed to be something that helps you cope and brings you to peace with something. If it doesn't, then you either have a bad therapist, you need more time, or you have an incurable illness that is crippling and will be a handicap for life. You deem a good trans to be someone who has severe dysphoria to the point of dysfunction, and honestly, I think that's really sad, because you have someone in front of you who has learned to cope with their position after some acute medical intervention, and you can't believe your eyes because it doesn't look like someone who is hanging on for dear life, grasping at every stereotype and social validation possible. It's like you only know of trans people who, if they don't get all the medical intervention possible to bring them closer to the sex they see themselves as, or even if they do, still look like Elliot, which is terribly insecure. I think that's a terrible bar of healing to aspire to. You might want to look at my videos, The Hard Truth About Transgender Identity, and the video, I'm Disordered, Not Dysfunctional, if you can stand it. I think what you meant to say was that you think I am not socially aware because I am actually quite self-aware, to the point where I have done all of my internal homework and have a confidence in my condition and sense of self that has brought me peace. Something I wish for you, because it seems you are still really triggered by someone not empathizing with what I assume is your transgender experience. And the fact that I did not empathize with that leads you to believe that I am socially unaware. I'm aware of it, and there are several other factors that I didn't mention in the video that lead me to believe what I did. But I didn't include them because the video was an exploration into body language, and those other factors were enough for an entirely separate video. I would be cautious of labeling me, quote unquote, looking like a whole woman, because that, quote unquote, invalidates biological men who have long hair and are of slight build. Your judgment there is totally subjective and implies that men must have short hair, be bulky, have lots of facial hair, and look otherwise differently than myself. Again, this is a hyper-focus on radical stereotypes in order to make achieving an expression and alleviating dysphoria on a superficial level possible. It sort of reveals some deeper issues there. It might be beneficial for you to believe your eyes because not all transgenderism looks the same. I would also say that someone who has severe dysphoria is not at all engaging in rational thinking. Rational meaning based in reason or logic by definition, or else they would be able to at least cope with their feelings of dysphoria because feelings are often illogical. If anything, I'm employing logic, coming to a very negotiated appearance of male, and therefore am being quite rational. I see a lot of hurt and trouble here, and I wish you well, really. So it's pretty clear from the get-go of this person's comment that they are really upset with my video and my assessments, and it has pretty much everything to do. It is likely their severe experience of gender dysphoria or body dysphoria. Tons of subjective judgment in here, like determining what is good trans and bad trans, and that in order to be a good trans, you must have a pretty intimate understanding of what bad dysphoria feels like. And their exclamations of, "It's really embarrassing. I can't believe my eyes. You're making a fool of yourself." All of these are pretty entitled comments to indicate indignation and outrage, as they say. They quite literally cannot grasp what it is that they're seeing. And as is going to be the case for a lot of the comments that will be in this series, when people like this are confronted with something that causes them to question themselves, the reaction is usually very violent. There's a lot of shame in confronting some things that they have within themselves, and anybody showing that they may be in the wrong or that they may have something to address to them is met with vehement denial. And worse, with people like this, they will then attack whoever it is that's showing that reflection to them. And worse, this person trashed a good chunk of the community that they say they belong to, the transgender community, me, myself, being a transgender individual. Instead of coming at this situation with a little bit more curiosity, and then also in an attempt to share with me where they feel I may have been wrong in some way, indicates that they're leading with their emotions, and that is often what this type of person, somebody with narcissistic tendencies or defense mechanisms, will do. They do not have the ability to communicate with other people that oppose them because they feel so misaligned with themselves. There is a lot of hurt within these people, and unfortunately it manifests in the outer world as attacking people that question them. And as is the case for all of the videos in this mini-series, it's the one overarching thing to keep in mind is not to take this kind of thing personally. Ultimately, this behavior is indicative of something within them and not something with you. It's really a pretty terribly tortured way to live, and I feel badly for these people if they are unwilling to have civil dialogue with someone. Then unfortunately there is nothing else that someone else can do. The work is entirely within them. And that goes for pretty much anybody who's exhibiting narcissistic behavior. They have to take responsibility for fixing it themselves.